My story is truth, and it is also metaphor. I think this morning, the correct call is, Houston, we have contact. The first thing I need to acknowledge is that you were all so good to me. Your staff has been beautiful. Your minister plied me with fish and wine last night. Way too late for me to be up here this morning, but anyway, he's sweet. He's very sweet and very hospitable. I want to dedicate the words I'm about to give you to Kenny Taylor, to Grady Jenkins, who helped me become who I am, and I found out that Grady was murdered a year and a half ago. He was a phenomenal Black gay therapist in Atlanta, an advocate for children, for families in distress and in trouble. And he was Georgia born and bred and phenomenal. And I miss him. Oh, he was also a dynamite drag queen. And if you'll pardon me, I need to also acknowledge a very good man, my Uncle Ben Teague. He died a week and some ago. He was 87. The Teagues are very long-lived. I have warned my husband about this. My grandfather lived to be 94. His daughter lived to be 93. His other son, Teddy, lived to be 92. My father is 85 and looks in wonderful health. People ask me, are we brothers? I do have to give you a warning, though. Uncle Teddy was a good man. He was a devoted husband, and he didn't ask for enough help to take care of Aunt Lois, who has Alzheimer's. There is a statistical death rate for caregivers of people with Alzheimer's. Don't try it alone. The only thing they said about Uncle Ben was that he was exhausted. Don't do it alone. Aunt Lois is still here. In 1981, my college friend Kenny presented me, and I didn't know it at the time, with a crossroads. When he invited me to move with him from Ottawa, Kansas to Houston. And if I had gone with him, things would have never been the same in my life. But all I could see was trouble. I loved Kenny, but I didn't trust him. I was standing there, and I also wasn't trusting my own imagination. And in the abject fear of Kenny's imagination, his courage scared me. Have you ever witnessed someone in their power about to go and fight the dragon, defeat the fear? They have the wind in their hair, whatever color it is. Okay, the wind in your scalp for some of us. We were not in the same plot lines, but our characters were crossing, but different stories. Let's also clarify something this morning. I didn't tell y'all this story to elicit your sympathy. I know with confidence that Kenny lived while he was alive. Now, he would have loved to live longer, and he would have been here this morning causing me trouble. He did not make a bad choice. He did not fail those who loved him or me or his family. But in the 1980s, public health systems and immunology systems failed Kenny. Those people working so hard to end the epidemic in those early years were not assisted by a government that cared about Kenny or me. The government and many public entities failed us as young men starting out in our adult lives. They failed the thousands of my friends and men who died without proper treatment, or government or communities willing to accept and save them. The society of the time was infected with more homophobia and AIDS phobia and just silliness. I don't want your sympathy. So one question our story makes clear is, am I living my life while I am alive? Is our Unitarian Universalism living out our faith, our values, while we are an alive movement? See, if I was still Baptist, I could spend 45 more minutes answering that question for you. But that's not my job as a UU minister. We each are responsible for answering Kenny's request to get in and find a new life. Back in 1981, my imagination failed me. In that parking lot then, I couldn't see Houston. I didn't even know what a Montrose was. I could not see my life going on in that strange land called Montrose, nor was I willing to adjust my vision. My creative eyes were shut to the idea of putting my life in Kenny's hands and in that Volkswagen. And there wasn't room for me. But I was in awe of him. He had a vision and dreams worth going for. The crossroads he presented were so scary, and yet 5 years later, I did make my move. Kenny grew up in Ottawa. I chose Ottawa. I was going to make it work for me. He had all he could take. But the next summer, I did begin to follow my imagination out of Ottawa, Kansas. And then I went to Atchison, Kansas. That's where Benedictine sits on the bluffs overlooking the Missouri River, and it's beautiful. After graduating 2 summers later, my cousin Tony offered me a plane ticket, my own VW, with wings, to come and visit him. And this was my chance to make a detour, and this time I took it, not to Houston, but to Atlanta. And that visit turned into a move. And Atlanta was, for me, Kenny's Montrose, or your new place where you thrive, where you can be the you were waiting to be. Whereas Reverend Thurman said, where you might hear the sound of the genuine coming to you. Because for some of us, we got to get away from some of the noise of our families to hear the sound of the genuine. I didn't know it, but Kenny had modeled for me that you can go. You can be free of the place that holds you back. I'm going to ask if my cousin Tony is present. He said he was going to try to make it. He is not. I wanted y'all to meet him. Maybe next time. Are you free this morning to turn at the crossroads? Do you have it together yet to do what your imagination has been begging you to do? And I don't have to name it. This morning, someone is looking at me and the decision I then made with Kenny, and you are screaming from the inside, Houston, we have a problem. That black guy's up there talking to me. Something you need to know about the story is I did not get in the car, but I also did not try to stop him. Even though I wanted to. I was scared for Kenny. because he was going to whatever Montrose is. He had tried to live free in Ottawa and be a student at Ottawa University where he grew up, and that wasn't going to work. He tried to live authentically in Kansas City, Missouri, the home of the Chiefs, who won the Super. No, right. Anyway, Kansas City, Missouri. That just didn't meet his vision, not in 1981. That wasn't the place calling him through his dreams and his desire to live. And by the way, back then, Houston was all that. I remember people talking about Houston. This is before the crash of the oil industry. You know what is calling you. You know where the place is that's calling you. You know what the idea is that is nagging you to get in the Volkswagen. This morning, let us learn when it is the call of someone else's imagination. And you don't have to like it if you find out that somebody's imagination is calling them to a new place. Can you imagine where we would be if the original ideas or visions of everything we now rely upon had been squelched by the people who did not believe in it? Say microwaves or radio waves. You can't see them. You're going to stick your food in a box, press some buttons, and what? And I can't use my good dishes? A phone that can travel with you and does more, almost anything but ring and have a phone call. Of course, there are some ideas that we cannot support. Some dreams are too much. But if we cannot go along, fine, but get out of the way of the dreamers. An outhouse works just fine. Plumbing sounds like too much. I want you to imagine how many clerics and priests looked up at the scaffolding and said aloud in Italian, "Why are they letting Michelangelo mess up these perfectly fine walls?" Sometimes we need to let painters paint. Kenny got out of Ottawa, Kansas, and lived. I hear calls to take us to new places philosophically. No, I don't agree with every dream that we're being asked to imagine. Some seem so far-fetched, but so did the notion that heaven would hold everyone. That love was more powerful than sin, that we could be comforted by the presence of one deity, one God, one entity not subdivided into things that we don't understand. All those were crazy imaginative ideas. And thus, the foundation of our church. Those strange notions. Some are asking us to imagine gender constructed in such a way that we, out of our love for everyone, simply say aloud what our pronouns are. Mine are he, him, his. If you have to default to Miss Thing, it's fine. What a moment. And I got it, y'all. It took me a while, but I got it. When I realized that it ain't about me, but it is so that our love extends to folks who need to hear a simple, what are my pronouns? It doesn't hurt me to do it. And first it feels strange, like that VW Beetle. To go to a place where gender is just constructed slightly different than we grew up with. And then I realized it's a welcome with our arms open this wide instead of like this. Let's ride to some new places, strange feelings, yes, to that new crossroads. Every person who has worked to set people free has had to be creative. The people who lead us to new freedoms, for people who have never seen, we've never seen in large numbers, are people with imagination, scary ideas, change that for some it is a matter of life and death. That's how important our movement is. And we could use some improved tools to break some of the old chains. Because some of the old tools don't work, and especially when you've let them rust. The idea that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King would consider nonviolent, Mahatma Gandhian nonviolence as a model for the classic civil rights struggle against the segregated, feudal, and violent South was insane. After they shot up their home in Montgomery, the parsonage, with Mrs. Coretta Scott King in the back of the house, thank God, pregnant with Yolanda, the first child. And you want to tell me we have to have a nonviolent social change movement? Now see, I grew up Baptist, National Missionary Black Baptist. And so I know what the deacons did. They went and got something to help you get to heaven, and they circled that house. But it was a black gay man. Here we are in Black History Month. I'm coming back, y'all. Who had the imagination and the gumption, because he was older than Dr. King, to sit Dr. King down and say, the movement won't survive like this. You're going to have to tell the deacons to put the guns away. They shot in his house at his pregnant wife. And a black gay man convinces, and he wasn't closeted, convinces Dr. King that I have seen Mahatma Gandhi. I've talked with his family. It worked in India, it will work here. That's insanity. And yet it changed the world. I am standing here because Bayard Rustin told Dr. King to tell the deacons to put the guns down. Well, that took up about 4 pages. Let me see. It took me a while to learn to listen to my imagination, y'all, to run with it. It took years to unlearn self-doubt and to listen to my own genuine that Howard Thurman talked about. He said you're doomed. He said it'd be better if you weren't born. I didn't say that. That's what Reverend Thurman said. I'm not sure if you're going to be doomed if you don't listen to that voice, but I know you'll never see the beauty that was intended just for you. If you never play the song that comes to you, the world will be robbed of a beautiful melody that might have been meant to save someone's life. My imagination did succeed. Early on when I became a UU, I heard something about we had no congregations in Atlanta, in the part of Atlanta that was largely African American. And we kept waiting on black folks to come way across town to us while we discussed racism in white suburbs. I noticed that fact and I thought, well, that's an interesting fact, and I kept going. And I kept trying to be a minister who would not ride in the imagination-fueled dream that I was having, and it wasn't working. I finally ended up in Plano, Texas. Be careful, y'all. In August. with two other UU ministers at a workshop given by the Methodists about learning how to plant a church. And it seemed simple to me, even though I was there to support my friends. I wasn't going to plant no church. And my friends who are church planters are not planting churches now, but I am. Be careful about who you hang out with. And Plano, Texas in August. I think the heat got to me. Anyway, after some rough riding, which included prostate cancer, yes, I am a survivor. People not believing that I was serious and finding that it is not on paper for a minister in our ministerial formation process to plant churches. It is nowhere in our guide. I looked, Colin. But on March 1st of this year, the Abundant Love Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the West End of Atlanta will celebrate our 2nd anniversary. And if you saw me crying during pure imagination, it's because we've never bounced a check and never worried about paying the rent in 3 years. We are being creative. We have to. We are at the crossroads of the Black church and the Unitarian Universalist movement. We're on the south side of the freeway that no one else has crossed from our movement, as far as I can tell. We used to be real close, but we never crossed I-20. By the way, after you leave our congregation, going south in the city of Atlanta with 6 million people, the next congregation is an hour and a half south in Macon. The next one is an hour and a half, I believe, no, 2 hours exactly, from downtown in Columbus, Georgia. It's an open field waiting on us. We got in Kenny's VW and we were riding along, and I can hear Kenny saying this morning, "You can come if you want to. I'll wait on you to get your things." Thank you, Kenny. We have no idea where our Montrose is, but we were told to go and be with the folks who are doing good work in the southwest part of Atlanta. And we heard, "Just do your best." Oh, that's your alarm? No. Okay. So come on along, y'all. Get in. Houston, I thank you for letting me join you and finally making it here with Kenny. Amen.